Welcome back to TVP World. You're watching another edition of News in Depth. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. The small Eastern European nation of Moldova finds itself pulled in opposite directions between its European aspirations and deep-rooted Russian influence. While Moldova is an official candidate for EU membership, Russian troops remain stationed in the breakaway region of Transnistria. And most Moldovans hold dual Moldovan-Romanian citizenship, symbolizing a westward tilt, yet pro-Russian sentiment still runs high. Joining us today on TVP World to unpack Moldova's geopolitical crossroads is Pavel Trzaskowski, TVP World Balkans correspondent, recently returned from Chisinau with on-the-ground insights into the region's delicate balancing act. Hello and welcome.
Hello, Ben. Good to be here.
So, recently, the Moldovan president made a statement about potential Russian influence in their election. And from your kind of underground experience, how seriously do you think this threat is?
Well, it's more than potential. It's very well documented. Russian interference, Russian influence in the region is very well documented by Moldovan authorities. Last year, Moldova held presidential elections and pro-EU accession referendum. And it is reported that approximately 150,000 votes could have been bought with Russian money. So as these elections we always say that the next elections are the most important elections, but it seems like these ones are specifically important for Moldova because on September the 28th, Moldovans will be choosing their new parliament. And, well, this will be the parliament that will possibly, hopefully, get Moldova into the European Union.
So we're looking at a critical juncture between leaning towards a more European Union kind of aspect or taking a more pro-Russian perspective. When it comes to the interference that you're talking about, there's a lot of vote buying, like you mentioned. And when it comes to the upcoming parliamentary election, are we observing the same phenomenon, or is it mostly manipulation in the information space?
It's both. It's both, but I think we should start with the fact. Let's talk a bit about Moldova, actually, as a country, what it is, because it is a small country of no more than 3 million people between Romania, member of the European Union, and Ukraine. But the small country has two regions. So one region that is separatist, and that is Transnistria, and one region that is autonomous to the south of the country, and this is Gagauzia. And both those regions are openly pro-Russian. So I actually managed to travel to the south of the country, to Gagauzia, to talk to some representatives of the region, to gather some information on the roots of this pro-Russian sentiment in the region. And I think we have a soundbite. I recorded an interview with an editor-in-chief of one of the outlets from the region that I would like to listen.
All right, let's take a look.
The special about this region is that it is totally controlled by pro-Russian political forces, and more than that, it is totally controlled by organized criminal group, which is headed by the Shor, a person which is hiding from the Moldovan justice in Russia right now, and is responsible in Russia for money laundering. In a global context, he's running one of the two biggest money laundering organizations. And he's also responsible for destabilization of the Republic of Moldova.
So you've got this region in which more than 95% of the votes in last year's EU accession referendum were against Moldova joining the European bloc, and the region is effectively run by a mafia state, bought with Russian money, which is very often paid in cryptocurrencies. And the mastermind behind these operations is fugitive oligarch Shor. Now, he was responsible for one of the biggest economic crises in the history of Moldova. The country gained independence after the 1990s. Where more than $1 billion disappeared from one of the banks in Moldova. And this disrupted the economy of the country. So it was 1/8 of that time's GDP of Moldova. So this money basically disappeared. Moldovans are still paying the debt after this, what is called the theft of the century. And Ilan Shor, an oligarch, fled the country first to Israel, then to Moscow, and he's now puppeteering a couple of small parties that will have a chance of making it into the parliament.
Right, so like you mentioned, there's still a substantial amount of people that do hold pro-Russian sentiment, especially in these breakaway regions. Let's say if an upcoming election, pro-EU party candidates actually do win the election and, well, eke through kind of their EU aspiration, wouldn't that pose a potential threat, having a country being in the bloc with such a large amount of population holding pro-Russian sentiment? We already see countries that perhaps becoming kind of an outlier in the European Union when it comes to its unity and getting things passed. Do you think that will pose a problem?
Well, you know, at the moment, the political situation in Moldova is as follows. The governing party has a majority vote in the parliament. This is the Party of Action and Solidarity. And for 4 years, they kept Moldova on a stable course into the EU accession. But there are, as you mentioned, there is this homegrown sentiment within Moldovans themselves, sentiment towards Russia, which was very evident. This was not my first trip to Moldova. I was in Moldova on May the 9th, and in Moldova, a Victory Day events similar to those in Russia are also held still. And at that time, I managed to talk to some of the people who attended the events that commemorated the victory of Soviet Union over fascism. And I actually also prepared a couple of sound bites with people that I talked to during that day. And well, let's listen to that.
All right, let's take a look at the cinnamon.
For me, this is Victory Day. I came for my grandfather who liberated Moldova from fascist occupation. My grandfather went through the whole journey, from the Winter War to this one. This is the biggest holiday in our family because my uncle burned alive in a tank near Leningrad. My uncle liberated Berlin as a young man. My mother received a medal for labor valor from 1941-45. This is a huge, huge holiday.
We celebrate, we honor. We are proud of our ancestors who gave us a peaceful sky above our heads.
So as you see, this is very open endorsement, hammer and sickles and red flags everywhere. And as you mentioned, there is a split, a serious split in Moldovan society between the pro-EU trajectory and this pro-Russian sentiment. However, one important thing to remember is that actually a majority of Moldovans is pro-European. And even if you have this one big party that holds a majority at the moment, which is openly pro-European, there are other parties, including the so-called patriotic bloc, which is composed of socialists and communists, that also say they're pro-European. Because, well, the Moldovan society wants to be the member of the bloc because they see the tangible benefits that come with it. They neighbor Romania, and they know that the country will develop if they become a member of the bloc. The plan is to become a member by 2030. However, well, it will only happen if the 28th September parliamentary election will give Moldova a government that is decisively pro-European, that it's not like, wishy-washy, or maybe we'll become a member or not, but, a decisive stance is needed. And this is actually what the country's president, and who comes from the ruling Party of Action and Solidarity, said this week in the European Parliament. I believe we also have a soundbite. Let's listen to it.
Let's take a look.
Ladies and gentlemen, Moldova cannot escape its geography. We feel the long arm of Russian aggression. We share a 1,200-kilometer border with Ukraine, longer than any of your countries. And the reason Moldova still enjoys peace today is because Ukraine stands.
So, yeah, as you can see, a very heartfelt appeal for Moldova to join the European Union. Moldova is not a NATO member state, but the country believes that EU membership will be a first step into providing some security guarantees for the country. A country that is, Russian drones also fall in Moldova, so it is under a lot of pressure, not only from the disinformation sphere and propaganda sphere, but also when it comes to, kinetic force.
Right. Maya Sandu, the president of Moldova, actually mentioned Ukraine in that soundbite that you just showed. Now, recently, President Zelensky had a discussion with Polish foreign minister about the accession of the European Union, and we do know that Moldova and Ukraine did apply for their membership together. And I believe initially the idea is to kind of work on these cases together, sort of as a bundled deal. Do you still see that as the trajectory that things are going? I do understand that from the Ukrainian perspective, they would like to be in this round of discussions, but due to the complication, of course, the ongoing war, do you think it would be in Moldova's interest to be bundled in with Ukraine when it comes to discussing their European Union path?
With the representatives that I talked to, they make it very clear that Moldova and Ukraine being in tandem and joining the European Union together will be beneficial for both countries. However, a lot depends on Hungary, because Hungary is possibly still blocking Ukraine's EU aspirations. And there were 3 countries that applied for EU membership at the same time. And that was Ukraine, that was Georgia, and Moldova. Yeah. And Moldova, of all the 3 at the moment, has the biggest chances of making it as soon as possible by 2030. And well, there are those voices in the European Union that, well, we cannot show that we fail everywhere, because, well, Georgia at the moment is a lost cause. Ukraine, given the Hungarian veto, we're not sure what's going to happen. So Moldova is the safest bet, and, well, that's why you see a lot of support coming from the European Union to Moldova at the moment. They received a huge financial aid package this year of almost 2 billion euro, which for Moldovan standards and scale is a lot.
Right. So, like you mentioned, this election that's coming is going to be very pivotal when it comes to whether or not Moldova will indeed join the European Union. What's the biggest hurdle, do you think, is still standing between Moldova and that reality?
Well, Russian disinformation, I think. As I told you before, approximately 150,000 votes were bought in last year's presidential elections and EU accession referendum. And these votes were bought using the so-called Shor network. So we have already discussed Shor, the fugitive oligarch, and he has a network of people that I was told works like a pyramid. So he is on the very top, getting instructions from the Kremlin, and then the command trickles down. For example, this week, an app started to circulate on Telegram. It's called Tainto, and this app enables users to obtain voting fraud instructions, and if they complete the instructions, they receive payment through cryptocurrency that's coming from Moscow.
Wow. This seems like quite aggressive action coming from Russia.
Very aggressive actions, yes, but this is like voting fraud, like buying votes is one of the things. Mm-hmm. Like you have also cyber attacks that attack infrastructure of Moldovan government. You have disinformation campaigns, you have propaganda campaigns, and they all work together to create a feeling that maybe, if the result of the elections will not be favorable for Russia, then maybe, they could say, or somebody could say close to the Kremlin, but these were not legitimate elections, they were swayed.
Right, so there's still probably a couple of hurdles that Moldova have to go through in order to be on the track to the European Union. Thank you so much for your input and insight and helping us break down all of this. I really appreciate it, and thanks for being with us on News in Depth.
Thank you, Ben.
Cheers. And thank you for tuning into this edition. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.